Welcome to the Dental Implant Practices podcast, where each episode will explore how to integrate dental implants into your practice and into bone, with your host, Dr. Philip Gordon.
Hey, Gary. So let me just say thanks for helping me get into podcasting.
You bet. You probably know a little bit of the history of my shows. So I discovered podcasting in 2010 as a consumer. And back then, you had to be a real geek to download a podcast because we didn't have podcast apps, and it was a pretty painful process to even just download one. But I started listening to them. I'm triathlete, and so I spent a lot of time running and cycling and swimming, and so I tend to listen to stuff when I'm training. And I tend to listen to business stuff because that's my area of interest. And then it was late 2011 when I looked around to see if there was anything in dentistry. And so I went to iTunes and typed in every different way you could type in dentist or dentistry podcast. And there was nothing. There was zero and nothing at all. And so I said, well, I guess I'll just do my own.
Sure.
And I learned how to podcast. I connected with Cliff Ravenscraft. I think I directed it to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Cliff's kind of the podcast answer man, and I took his online course, learned how to podcast. Then I built a radio station in my office. I'm OCD, so I can't do anything half-baked. So I built a radio station in my office, and my vision was to do a show every week, every Wednesday. I kind of randomly picked Wednesday, and the format that I chose was an interview format. Peppered with an occasional solo show where I would, go into kind of a deep dive on my own. And I launched it January of 2012. So next week we'll be heading into our 6th year, which is kind of cool. And we have listeners in 151 countries, which is crazy. I look at that and I just kind of smile and say, cool. But anyway, that's the short history of the Thriving Dentist Show. And I understand it's kind of launched a little bit of a niche in dentistry, that there's 34 dental podcasts now.
Well, I'd say you can be the grandfather or the godfather of dental podcast. Cool. Yeah. So
it's kind of cool. I've always encouraged others. I've encouraged quite a few, including yourself and people like David Hornbrook. David called me and said, "Hey, I want to do a podcast. Can you help me?" I said, "You bet, man." I mean, we've all got a different voice. We all have a different audience. We all have our own perspective. And hey, there's plenty of room. The reality is that I think 9 out of 10 dentists in the world have never heard the word podcast. So we need to sort of spread the word out there. And I chose the interview format because, I've been in dentistry since 1980, and I've got great relationships with people in dentistry, people like Gordon Christensen and David Hornbrook and, Frank Spear and others. And I knew I could pick up the phone, give them a call, or I could send them an email and give them a call and say, "Hey, come on the show." And back then, I'd invite them to be on my podcast, and they'd say, "Well, what's that?" And I'd tell them, and they say, "Okay." Now, at least, most of the movers and shakers in dentistry know what a podcast is. So I don't think you'll have trouble getting guests. It's just reaching out to them. And like I said, everyone has a different voice, has a different audience, has a different perspective. I know that yours is, from having gone through the topics, you've got a variety of topics in there, but it's slanted more towards the clinical side of dentistry. And, that's a great niche.
Yeah, and I just feel like right now that's where it's at, and it will drift. I did get Paul Homley on there, but we probably talked a little more technical. I think I'm going to reach out to Paul.
Paul's a cool guest.
I love Paul, and I think I'm going to reach out to him again. I'll say, okay, now just talk me through. Let's just do a 1-hour CE course of getting the patients to yes from one of your seminars, Paul, because that's the soft skill that the stuff he teaches is invaluable.
I was the co-director of PAC Live. I don't know if you remember PAC Live, Philip, but that was the program at University of Pacific that David Hornbrook was the director. And it was a course where dentists would come out with their team members and do a 10-unit upper anterior porcelain veneer case. And live patient, they brought a patient out. It was the first, postgraduate live patient course. And we ran that from 1998 to 2007. And I was the co-director. David was the director. I was the co-director. If they weren't in David's lectures, it was a 6-day course. It was Friday, Saturday, Sunday over 2 different weekends. And if they weren't in David's course, learning how to do that kind of dentistry or actually doing it, they were in my courses learning all about the business side. So how to talk to patients about a $15,000 case that isn't going to be covered by insurance, how to get the team behind it, how to market it. And I brought in a team of people to support that. And Paul was the one I brought in to teach our attendees case presentation. And he's awesome. You ought to have him come on back periodically, because that's a topic that every dentist can improve.
Yeah, I'm going to have him back on again. I mean, time and time again, he's just, he's in one of those guys that he's such a mega star. Like, he's got his hands in everything. And so everybody's trying to get him. And so just trying to get him on the books is a scheduling nightmare. But he's
But what's different now is, back in the day, we all used to write. I had a column in dental economics for 10 years, and I've written 350 articles in the trade press. And, print's dead, other than blogs. Print is dead. And the cool thing about really the new medium, audio and podcasting really is the new medium. And it's so easy to do. I mean, it's not easy to learn how to do this stuff, but it's easy to be a guest on the show, and it gives them lots of exposure. And, it's really a useful part of their own marketing to get out there and, to get exposure to people that they might not hear otherwise. My show, I had no idea when I launched it. Literally, it was a grand experiment. I thought I'd have some listeners because, I've spoken at just about every dental meeting in the U.S. and Canada. I think there's maybe less than a handful that I have not spoken at. And so I figured, I've got an unusual name. People remember my name, and I'll probably get some listeners. But it was just a passion. It was just something I wanted to share useful information. I wanted to connect with, people in dentistry and share the information out. And what really surprised me was about 12 weeks after we launched, it started to go viral internationally, which just kind of mystifies me, because we did some things to help that in terms of my social media presence and such, but it wasn't a grand design. It was more of an accident. It was a happy accident. And that's been interesting. Now, granted, 80% of our listeners are domestic right here in the U.S. The other 20% of our listeners, which is a big chunk, come from the other 150 countries from which we have listeners. So it's really kind of cool. I get emails from young dentists all over the world. I get 2 or 3 a week from young dentists just saying thanks, because I got one from a dentist from Malawi the other day. And I had to go to Google Maps. I'm pretty good with geography, but it's like, okay, now where's Malawi again? And by the way, it's a landlocked country in Southeast Africa. And I got a email from a young dentist, and he introduced himself, and he said, hey, I'm a dentist in Malawi. I'm one of only 250 dentists in the entire country of 19 million people. And he said, we have no organized dentistry here. We have no organized anything. And he said, if I want to go take a course, the nearest place I can take a course is a 2-day drive to South Africa. And, or he said, more likely I jump on a plane, fly to London, and I'll spend a week at a convention in conference in London. But he said, hey, now thanks to your show, I get an hour a week, downloaded to my iPhone. And he said, I feel like I'm staying on top of things. And he was just writing to say thanks. So that was kind of cool. I appreciate getting stuff like that. It's kind of cool. But just keep getting it out there, and it'll just take off. And there's some cool thing. I subscribe to a number of podcasts on the industry, not in dentistry, but podcast at large. And they're predicting that next year is going to be kind of the breakout year for 2017 will be kind of a breakout year. It's still a little bit in its nascent days. I mean, granted, you don't have to be a nerd to download it anymore, because it's on the iPhone. The Apple app really was sort of the tipping point to where it started to go more mainstream, but it's still not entirely mainstream. But next year, many automobile manufacturers are going to have smart radios as options, and many with voice prompts, like Volvo, for example, BMW, Ford. So you can just, hit the voice prompt on your car radio, and say, hey, download dental implant practices with Dr. Philip Gordon. And just pops right up on the screen and press the button and it plays. So that's going to represent what I think is going to be the next breakthrough. And I think all of our listening audiences will mushroom because now all of a sudden it's going to be, mainstream. I mean, who listens, first of all, who watches TV anymore? Everyone DVRs or TiVos everything, Same with radio. Who listens to radio anymore? I mean, you listen to Sirius or some other form or frankly, just playlists off your phone, so no one wants to listen to commercials anymore. So, it's going to be kind of cool when that happens because I think a whole new world of dentists are going to discover podcasting to listen, as consumers.
Yeah, no, I think it connects people in a way that they haven't before because, the internet connected people through time and space like this world's never seen. And this is taking it to even the next level because you're getting that person's own thoughts, that person's own voice, in close to real time. Obviously it's recorded, but you get to touch and feel and experience that on a weekly basis and learn in a way that this information is given freely with nothing expected in return. It's not like, you're getting paid to do this show. You're giving this out there. I mean, actually it costs you money to run this show.
Right.
It takes time and money to produce a show. And
I'll tell you what really turned me on to podcasting is I read a book written by Mitch Joel. If you haven't read it, I'd highly recommend it. I don't know if you're a reader, Phil. I'm a voracious reader. But it's a book written by Mitch Joel, Joel, and it's titled 6 Pixels of Separation. And it's a digital takeoff of the concept of 6 degrees of separation. You know that concept, right? How everybody on the planet is, no more than 6 degrees of separation from one another, but he called it the 6 pixels of separation. And it really was a case for the next round of digital application. He does a podcast on He owns a big marketing agency in Toronto, in Canada. And, he said it's things like podcasts that are going to be where people get information from in the future. And I read that in 2011. And that's what really sort of kind of tipped me in favor of doing it because I thought, he's absolutely right. And what's weird is the medium is so interesting. I was lecturing in Austin, Texas last year for a new dentist conference. These were dentists that were less than 10 years out of dental school. And it was a big group, about 500 dentists. And, you do some lecturing, right?
Small potatoes.
Well, I did 60 courses this year and I'm still lecturing full speed. Every time you lecture at the breaks, dentists come up to you and they have questions, and I mean, it happens every time. So at the first break, there's probably 8 or 10 dentists, at the podium and asking me a question. And there was a young lady that was patiently waiting her turn. And finally, everyone else had asked her question and got to her. And she said, "Oh, Gary, it's so great to meet you. How's your wife, Therese, doing? And how's she doing with yoga? And how's your daughter, Lexi, doing? And let's see, she's about a junior in college right now, right? How's she doing?" And everyone's turned around to look at her like she was a stalker. Like they just snapped around and looked at her and she turned like crimson red. And she goes, "Oh, no. I'm not a stalker. I'm not a stalker. I listen to his podcast. And he Gary drives in my car with me every morning to work." And we all started cracking up. She was a sweet young lady. And everyone started laughing, because it's a different level of when you're either, in their earbuds, which is the way most people listen to podcasts. When you're working out at the gym or running or walking the dog, whatever, in most cases, you got earbuds on and you're literally in a dentist's head, or they've got you on the car and you're in the car with them. I mean, you're figuratively in the car with them. It's a whole different level of relationship, if I can use that word loosely, because, we don't know who they are, but it's a whole different level of relationship than any other medium. It's different than reading a blog. It's even different than attending a seminar. It's more intimate. And because of that, it's just, it's a more powerful form of connection. I mean, I'm a podcast evangelist, I mean, it's just like, it's the best, it's simply the best marketing move I've ever done. And that's why when people contact me, I just encourage them. Say, just do it, man. Here's some resources for you. You can learn from me. I had to kind of make my own way to figure it out. But hey, I'm happy to share that with others and people like Jody and Cliff and others. And it's like, hey, man, there's room.
Yeah, I mean, I basically knew nothing about podcasting. I had been listening to yours for a couple of years, and I was turned on through my father, who's a older dentist than I, obviously, been doing it a lot longer. But he actually is pretty savvy on some of this stuff, and he'd been listening to you for years. And he said, you gotta listen to this guy because just the way he's doing things is revolutionary. He's just putting it out there for free. And I thought, well, I mean, shoot, that beats time and money away from the family and kids and getting out of your practice and taking time out of work. And I thought, well, I can carve out an hour and work out and listen to this guy in the car. And exactly, you're right. I mean, I think it's a level of connection that I only work out with my best friends and I only drink coffee with people I like. And so right. If I can do two or three of those things with someone I've never met, if you came into town and asked to stay at my house, I'd probably say yes. And, I'd never met you before, but it's just a different level of connection that I think is exciting. And it's able for people to get insight that maybe they wouldn't have ever gotten. And I think right. And I think that's what this is about. How can everyone make the field a little better and push relationships and push dentistry to the next level? Because it's even as a country, and especially in Kansas City, but nationally, dentistry is a small niche still.
It is,
and it's great to have connections, and it's great to go through things with people and have support. And it forever was such an isolated profession. And, places like Dental Town or places like Podcast, have given people a voice and an ability to say, okay, I'm not the only one who does this or has these problems, or, how can you solve problems that maybe you can't think of on your own? And I think podcasting is that next level of interconnection. So it's fantastic.
It's really democratized the platform. So in other words, back in the day, you had to know somebody at Dental Economics or Dental Products Report, or at the Chicago Midwinter meeting. You had to know somebody in order to get on the platform. And now today, anybody can seize the platform. Obviously you have to have some knowledge and you have to produce a good product. Otherwise, you're just not going to have listeners, But if you have knowledge and you have, a passion that you share. I always say there's two requirements to be on my show. And by the way, you meet both of those, Phil. But the two requirements are, number one, you've got to be an authority. And number two, you have to be passionate. If you miss on either one of those, then I'm not interested in having you on the show because, hey, if you're an authority but don't have any passion around it, then that's not going to work. And if you're, passionate but you actually don't have any credibility, that's no good either. So it really takes both of those, but it's really democratized the process. And I love that because anybody can seize the platform and create something useful. And my whole mission with it is just simply to share useful information. You probably know that I'm not a dentist. I've never been a dentist, but in Arizona, you don't have to be a dentist to own a practice. And I actually own three practices. My flagship practice is called Life Smiles. And I bought a kind of a dilapidated backwards fixer-upper practice in May of 2007. And I bought it in partnership with the young dentist, Paul Nielsen. He's a 2005 grad of UW, University of Washington. And we bought it in a partnership, and we've been developing it ever since. And in the last year, we bought two others. Next week, January, we're going to be branding the other two practices as Life Smiles practices. We wanted to kind of keep them with their own branding initially to minimize the confusion with existing patients. But now that we've owned it for a little while, we're going to brand them all as Life Smiles. And we're building a small group and kind of doing some things that's completely fee for service. We're not contracted with any insurance companies. We're in a highly competitive market, but we're doing really well. And a lot of what I talk about on the show is our experiences with Life Smiles.
Well, and you're doing things that people want to do, and then you're stepping out and saying, "Well, here's how I've done it. Here's processes I've used." And And if you want my services, I can help hold your hand a little and do that with you. And if not, I'll share my secrets. But the thing that you'll find is you can give away everything you do, and 5 people out of 100 might do it. And so I
learned that a long time
maybe
ago.
Even less than that. So it's the mentality that, oh my gosh, if everyone knows what I'm doing, I'll be out of business. And it's really it's not the case, because doing things the right way is never easy. And there's so many people that aren't willing to put the time and the effort to have the true level of, success or whatever that they maybe think they want, because it's not the path that's easy. And so, you might be able to say, hey, running a dental practice is very, very hard. And if you want to get to that next level, you have to do what you're already doing plus X, Y, and Z. Well, most people can't get past the busy work already. And so the ability to take it to the next level, it just seems incomprehensible. So,
but if they can come in on someone's shoulders, that's
exactly, yes.
That's the magic of all this. And you know what? And I've always said this, and I'm an abundance thinker by perspective, but our competition is not the dentist next door, the dentist down the street. It's any way people get to spend their disposable income. It's the restaurants, it's the movie theaters, it's Apple Computer, it's REI, and anywhere people can spend their money. And the truth is, most of what we do in dentistry is elective. I mean, except for extremely urgent care, it's elective. And we've got half the adults in the United States that don't visit the dentist. So I mean, there's plenty of opportunity, for sure. I'm really passionate about implant dentistry. Obviously with advanced training. But Gordon Christensen says that, and he makes the statement, with advanced training, he makes that disclaimer. But he said any dentist with the proper training can place implants. And the oral surgeons don't like to hear that, and the periodontists don't like to hear that, but he's right. And, it does require advanced training, and you do have to know your limitations, and you have to know, you have to have some case selection. But, we're an example. We have, he's not actually a surgeon. He's a general dentist that did a 2-year implant residency down in Miami. And he chose not to have a practice. In other words, he came out of that residency, came back to his hometown of Phoenix, and he wanted to work with general dentists. And he worked with 7 of them around the area, and gives them 2 or 3 days a month, depending on their volume. He gives us 3 days a month. And he places implants, and then Paul and Tim Schmidt's our second doc in our practice, and then they restore him. Well, we got to a point where we needed Dr. Santoro more than 3 days a month, and he just couldn't give it to us because of the commitments in the other practices. So Paul went out and took a mini implant residency through Dr. P.K. Clark. Do you know about him?
I do, yeah. I've had many people tell me that process is phenomenal. I haven't actually been able to get a hold of them to kind of do an interview.
I'd highly recommend it.
I'm trying to get a hold of him for the podcast, and I'm actually, trying to.
I'll shoot you his email. I'll shoot you his email address.
Trying to pin down a time that I can get up and see him in 2017.
Yeah. Well, Paul did that in 2014. He went up and took
Whitecap, right?
Whitecap Institute. He went up and took a 1-week mini residency, and the way it works is it's pretty intense. It's Monday through Friday, and by Friday, if you want to, you can have a patient come up and actually place implants under Dr. Clark and his team's guidance. And anyway, that's all Paul needed on top of his education. Now, granted, Paul's got a fellowship and a mastership in the AGD, so and he takes about 200 hours of CE a year. So that wasn't his first foray into implant dentistry, but that was really what he needed to kind of tie it all together. And then he started placing implants with Dr. Santoro's help and his support. And Paul's probably placed 400 implants since then. And so it's a big part of our practice. And we do everything from, to as locators all the way to, full mouth fixed, full mouth reconstruction with fixed implants. I think our favorite thing to do is replacing a floppy lower denture with, if we have enough bone and health with the patient, we can do 4 with a hybrid denture, screw retained. And we do quite a bit of that. And it's a cool case because it's truly life-changing for those people. They were, dealing with floppy lower denture, and now they've got a fixed option that works great. And hopefully will mitigate future bone loss and keep the patient healthy and able to eat whatever they want. And kind of a cool part of our practice.
Yeah, those are actually some of my favorite cases because they have gone to a complete denture, and their hopes and dreams of eating and smiling and confidence went in the gutter. And then you're able to resurrect them back to, in their eyes, a whole person again. And
now they're ready.
And now they're ready because they're motivated. They've spent 2 years not eating, and they said, I'm not going to spend the next 20 like this. Right. And I don't care how much it costs and what the surgery is. I need to do something.
Well, it's funny. They'll show up, and you never want to judge a book by its cover because some of them don't look like they have two nickels to rub together.
Oh, dirty overalls and holes in their shoes. And then they break out 10,000 cash.
Exactly.
And say, I want to get started.
They break out cash and say, is this enough? It
is today.
Yeah. It's funny. I swear one of them brought in like a coffee can that he had buried in the backyard with cash in it. And, it was a $22,000 case, and he didn't bat an eyelash. I mean, it was like, and you and Nate thought he had 22 cents.
And I have more respect for those people than half the people that drive in a Mercedes and want to nickel and dime me for
they're our best patients
for single units. I mean, those are my absolute joy because I know they're giving me everything they've got, and in return, I'm going to give them the best dentistry there is on this earth. And it usually is a win-win-win. I mean, those are the most joyful cases to complete.
The lunch pail carrying blue collar working class folks that's our backbone of our practice, and practices all three of them, and love those folks, and we bend over backwards to take care of them, and they are some of the most appreciative people on the planet.
Sure. So I guess with moving into a little bit more on your history in dentistry, though. Kind of tell me how you got started in the dental field and how that's changed over the past 30 years.
It's an interesting background. It started in 1980. I was still in college at the University of Oregon, and I had a young family and, had to support my family. So I worked full time, and I was a law clerk, which would you like to know what my skill set was, Philip?
I'm thinking getting coffee and making copies.
Bingo. You got it. You must know something about that because I had two skills. I could get coffee and I could press the copy button on the copy machine. Pretty cool, huh?
That's what I did in my dad's dental office for about 4 summers when I was in high school.
It's a good way to start. Anyway, I worked for Rick Mercer, which is a name that many of your listeners will recognize. Rick was a wonderful mentor. And anyway, that's where I started. And I kind of progressed through the firm. I ended up working with many dentists on the practice management side. Our law firm was kind of divided into two departments. One department was a traditional law firm that did things like incorporate dentists, write pension plans, handle legal agreements, and so on. And the other part of the firm was a practice management firm. We had 10 doctors on staff. We had 7 at the time, 7 physicians and 3 dentists. And the physicians and dentists worked with our clients who were physicians and dentists on the practice management side of their practice. Over time, the firm evolved into being a dental exclusive firm. It wisely moved away from medicine, working with physicians. And I had something to do with that. I was asked to do a study in the early 80s for the firm about where there was more potential with physicians or dentists. And I went out to AMA meetings and ADA meetings, and I didn't like what I saw on the medical side, because on the medical side in 1982, 1983, all the meetings were about how you needed this managed care and that managed care, or you were going to be shut out. And you were going to lose the opportunity of signing up for those contracts. And I looked at it and said, no, that's a mistake because you're going to lose control. The bean counter is going to have control. And I made a recommendation to the firm that we should specialize in working with dentists, and that's the direction that they went. I spent the late 1980s working with Dr. Omer Reed. Dr. Reed recruited me to be part of his consulting firm. And by 1989, I felt like I'd worked with about 500 dentists at that point. I'd done quite a bit of lecturing at that point for both Mercer as well as Dr. Reed's firm. And I felt like it was time to hang my own shingle. So I started my own consulting firm in 1989, Takacs Learning Center, and I've had my own firm ever since.
Now, who were the other big names back in 1989 for practice consultant?
Well,
go through time here with me.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a time warp, but in the early 1980s, there was a very large firm called Quest. Your silver-haired and no-haired listeners will recognize that name, Quest. And Quest was one of the largest at that time. Roger Levine was just getting started in the mid-1990s. Fortune Practice Management was later in the game, but for the most part, practice management was kind of in its early days. Although I do want to give a shout out and recognition to Linda Miles. Linda Miles and Associates. Linda started in the mid-1970s, and Linda did a fantastic job of kind of plowing new ground and kind of turning dental consulting into a recognized profession. Philip, I don't know if you know Linda, but she is just a dear, dear, dear person. And all of us owe a debt of gratitude to the wonderful work that Linda did. And she's a wonderful mentor. But I'd say Linda Miles and Associates was one of the firms in the mid 1980s that was growing. In fact, she made the Inc. 500 list, one of the 500 fastest growing companies in the United States. I think that was 1986 and 1987, something like that. But those are the big ones. Quest, Horace Mercer was big at that time. Pentegra was Dr. Omer Reed, Roger Levin, and then Linda Miles. And then I started mine in 1989. I wanted to be independent and hung a shingle. And that was the start of owning my own firm. And that was a great path for me.
That's great. It's you've got to get some experience, just like anything else, bold and new. You got to get some experience, and then you've got to muster up some courage, and then take that dive. And it
was scary. I was terrified.
It's all the bigger the dive, the more the fear, but the greater the reward. So
I was terrified. I had a young family. My wife was a school teacher, and school teachers are the most underpaid people on the planet. I had to put food on the table, and I was terrified. Literally didn't know where the next paycheck was coming from, but just decided I would figure it out as I went. And, that was just a great experience. Any of you that are listening to this that are thinking, hey, I need to get into my own practice, I'd encourage you to take the leap. And, I have a saying that I actually have printed on my wall. It's a saying by Walt Disney, and it goes something like this. In fact, I'm looking at it. It says that sometimes you just have to take a leap and build the wings on the way down. And I think Walt Disney was right about that. If you wait till everything's absolutely perfect and you have it all planned out, you might wait forever. Now, granted, you should do some planning, and you should have some, lots of thought into your business and into your practice. But at some point, you just have to take the leap and figure it out as you go.
Yeah, there's no perfect timing in life. And, some of those opportunities, they have to be calculated, but then you just have to run off that cliff and jump. And, but those can also be your most, the times where you grow as a person the most.
Oh, absolutely.
That adversity, if it doesn't break you, will build character. So that's always a good thing.
Need is a tremendous motivator.
It is, yes. And hungry kids. Yeah. So what would you have told a general dentist wanting to place implants back in 1989 when you started your practice?
Obviously implants have been around for a long time. The science, and you know about this, Philip, the science and the technology of implants have been around for a long time. But it's quite amazing the way things have progressed to the point where we are today, fast forward to 2016, and we have such amazing technology. We're able to do things, in terms of biocompatibility of materials, just for one example, diagnostic ability that we have through 3D imaging. And it's just amazing. But back in 1989, you basically had to take a lot of advanced training. There were some good places to go back then. It's gotten only better, since then. The technology has made implants much more predictable. That's what I think is maybe the biggest improvement in dental implants. But what I would have told the young dentist in 1989, if they had any interest in dental implants, I would have said, Go out and seek out the best mentors. There's some great mentors out there. Go out and seek them out and pay the price. Belly up to the counter, pay the price, take the education, and start implementing in your practice. What I love about implants, Philip, is the way that it's truly life-changing dentistry. It could a single implant, especially if it's in the aesthetic zone. I mean, if we're missing a tooth in the aesthetic zone, the ability to provide, a fixed implant that today, can look completely natural, is absolutely amazing. Of course, I think about patients that are edentulous or partially edentulous. That patient with the floppy lower denture, right? I mean, how often do you see that?
All the time.
Right? Maybe not every day, but I bet you see that every week in your practice, right?
For sure.
So that patient with a floppy lower denture. And usually it goes something like this. They come into the practice and they say, Dr. Gordon, this is a patient that's maybe in her late 60s, okay? She comes into your practice and she says, Dr. Gordon, I sure wish old Doc Baker would have never retired. I'm from Iowa. And, I had my first set of dentures about 20 years ago, and Doc Baker sure made a great denture. It fit perfect. And ever since then, I haven't been able to get one that fits. I'm sure hoping you can help me. Right?
Oh yeah, and they still have the same denture they wore 20 years ago.
Right, and they don't know.
Sure.
It's not a matter of their intelligence. It's not their fault. They don't know. And when we explain, to Mrs. Jones that she's lost bone, and as a result of that, we can reline a denture, we can remake a denture, but we're essentially going to be, kind of chasing a downhill slide. But hopefully she's got enough bone left to where she's a good candidate for implants, and you can show her implants can help her restore, give her a second chance at good oral health. And it's truly life-changing. If she, that floppy lower denture is so emblematic of, frustration that patients experience, that if you can provide them a fixed option where they can eat anything they want. Philip, it's dangerous to make absolute statements of any kind, always or never. Would you agree with that statement, that it's dangerous to make absolute statements?
That's the only time that it really bites you in the rear, is when you say always or never.
Always or never, right?
Yeah.
So we have to be careful about that. But one statement that I'm going to make that I think violates that axiom is that, at least here in the United States, people want to eat whatever they want. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and that and generally large quantities of it too.
Yeah, and large quantities. And that could be corn on the cob, that could be a steak. You're in the Midwest. I remember the first time I went to Omaha, Nebraska, and I was speaking at the Nebraska State Dental Association, and my meeting host said, Gary, have you ever had a really good corn-fed beef? And I turned to him and I said, I'm not sure. And he says, no, if you can't say yes, then you've never had it. Anyway, he took me to a steakhouse, and I experienced my first amazing, corn-fed filet, that you could cut with a fork. People want to be able to eat that. They want to be able to eat corn on the cob. They want to eat with confidence. And they're willing to invest in a second chance at dental health. And what I love most about implants is the way it's life-changing dentistry. So to bring it back to your question, I would have told any dentist that would listen in 1989 to go out and seek out the knowledge, find mentors, and take a deep dive into helping patients improve their health with dental implants.
And that's really probably the same advice you'd give them today. And the only thing that's changed is maybe the name of the mentors and the various information at the courses. But I think you've got to seek out who's doing a top-notch job, who is willing to teach, figure out where they're at, and try to learn everything you can from them.
You know what else I would advise, whether it would be 1989 or today? I would also develop great relationship with the specialists in your area, with the oral surgeons and periodontists in your area. I truly don't think that a general dentist that places implants is in competition with the specialists, because one thing, as your diagnostic acumen improves, and as you're able to see things and you're able to identify things diagnostically, you're likely to send certain cases to the specialist. But it's great to have colleagues as resources for you that can help you with diagnosis, can help you with treatment planning, can help you with materials. And certainly there's room for general dentists that place implants as well as specialists that place implants. I don't believe it's a zero-sum game. I don't believe that for a general dentist to place implants, it automatically assumes that you take everything away from the specialists in your community. I think if you do it right, you can still be a vital referral source to the specialists in your community.
Yeah, definitely a team approach is best with anything. And whether that's your specialist or your suppliers or your labs, if you're not surrounding yourself with a great team and then working on that relationship, you're going to miss out and opportunities to grow.
Well, there's huge opportunity. I lectured last year at AMIS, the American Association of Oral Maxillofacial Surgeons, and I had to do some research on the incident or the need for dental implants. Can I share some of that research with you?
Oh, sure. I love hearing stats.
So would you be surprised if I told you that 76% of Americans aged 35 and older are missing at least one tooth, not including their wisdom teeth? 76%.
Well, it doesn't surprise me a bit, but I'm always interested what the statistics are because...
Here's another one. Yeah. In 2015, which is the most recent year I have information, 22% of Americans age 60 and over are completely edentulous.
That's staggering.
Now, that number is going down historically when we go back and look at like your dad's generation and my grandfather's generation. That statistic is going down. But I think we would both agree that 22% of Americans 60 and older are completely edentulous. That's an opportunity. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that number is going down. I think the population is going up. So well, I'm not sure. There's still a huge need for it, I guess is my point.
Right. You're right about that because the number of Americans 60 and older is going up because of improvements in health and wellness and people living longer. It is going up. And if here's another statistic I'll share with you. Do you know that if a patient is 72 years old, can you guess what their lifespan is according to the U.S. Bureau of Statistics? If they've made it to 72, what do you think their lifespan is?
Well, if they made it to 72, they're probably one of these super agers, and then they're probably expected to live to about 93.
You're very close. Another 18 years, according to the U.S. Bureau of Statistics. If you made it to 72, let's face it, if you've made it to 72, you've dodged some landmines, right?
Sure. But I've got these 72-year-olds in my office that don't take a medicine, jog every morning, and say, well, I just don't know if I want to invest in my teeth. I might not make it that much longer. And I'm thinking, my grandpa just turned 96 last week, and he still drives a car and lives by himself. So I think, these super agers that, they've got another 20 years in them. So why not invest in your teeth?
You bet. And many of them have the perspective that they want those their last 20 years to be as healthy as possible, and they want to eat anything they want. So I don't know. I really believe there's a huge opportunity out there to grow the implant component of your practice. I really believe, we're experiencing that in my own practice. It's a significant part of our practice. We're a general practice that also does quite a bit of cosmetic dentistry, quite a bit of restorative dentistry, and quite a bit of dental implants. But we're very much a general practice by brand, but we do quite a bit of those three more advanced services. And implants are a very important component of what we do. And I believe that can be the case for any of your listeners.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So, most of the implants placed in this country are either coming out of or from a referral from a general dentist. That it's not usually someone walks into an oral surgeon and says, I want an implant. So they're either going into the general dentist and they're placing it, or they're going into the general dentist then being referred to a specialist and they're placing it. So the pathway for entry is that general dentist. So, my thought is we need to get general dentists diagnosing, thinking, and talking and referring and placing more implants.
Well, here's an interesting element of that discussion, Philip. Half the adults in the United States do not have a dentist. That's a hard statistic that comes from the ADA. 50% of the adults in the United States do not have a general dentist. And as you might guess, the people that don't have a dentist would tend to have inferior dental health. That makes sense, doesn't it? Because they're not going to a dentist.
Yeah, unless they got a do-it-yourself kit at home and fixing them up in the garage. But I hope that's not the case.
But they typically will have poor dental health because they're not experiencing regular professional care. And those people is kind of interesting because where they go to get their information today is the internet. And they go specifically, I'll use a noun as a verb. They Google it.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And, so one of the things that I think any of your listeners can do, is to really master marketing digitally to find patients, because those people don't have the normal pathway to find a dentist. And it's kind of interesting. The most common search term in dentistry is the word dentist. So it's dentist in your community. So you're in Kansas City, correct?
Yeah, I'm in I'm in the southern part of the Kansas City area, in Leawood,
What's the
Kansas.
immediate town that you're in?
Leawood.
Leawood. Okay. So the most searched term in Leawood for dentistry is going to be dentist Leawood. That makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, dentist or dental. Or
dental or something like that. Now, it could be another term. It could be crown Leawood. It could be whitening Leawood, dental implant Leawood, something like that. But now the next two most searched terms after dentist in your community are toothache, and again, usually tied to your town, and dentures. Now, you might think about that and say, well, I don't really want to be known for dentures because we don't want to do removable. But you can actually turn that to your advantage. You could, through your search engine optimization and through your digital marketing, market dentures. And then when people land on your website, rather than going to your homepage, they could land on a landing page that was all about how if you're having trouble with a floppy lower denture, you may be a good candidate for dental implants. So in other words, you could use the fact that people are searching for dentures and provide them education information that might help them understand why dental implants might be a good solution for them. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And even if you don't convert them to a 4 or even a 2 locator, I mean, worst case scenario, I mean, maybe you're just remaking a great set of dentures that really still enhances the quality of that patient's life. So, I mean, either way, you've got opportunity to help them and help grow your practice.
And very often those patients will be interested in the best that dentistry has to offer. They may come in thinking they want to simply replace a worn old denture. But when we educate them and kind of bring them along, let them know how much we care about them, they may be an excellent candidate for dental implants. So pardon my enthusiasm around implants, but it's an awesome component, should be an awesome component of any dental practice that's where the dentist is willing to make the investment in the education.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love marketing too, because, if you can't market and you can't talk dentistry, if you can't sell dentistry, if your team doesn't support it, then you're not doing dentistry and you're not helping people. And so I don't think those are dirty terms in dentistry. And I don't look at, like you said, I think there's enough people on this planet to keep us all busy if they really wanted to. So.
Well, I know you recently had Paul Homily on your podcast.
Absolutely.
And I would encourage your listeners, if they haven't heard that one, to go back and listen to that one. If you've heard it, listen to it again, because Paul is just amazing at teaching dentists how to communicate effectively with their patients. And I don't know a dentist on the planet that couldn't improve. There's still room for improvement. And communicating and educating our patients so they want the best that dentistry has to offer. And no one better than Paul to do that.
Yeah. And I hate blowing up his ego even more, but I told him when I talked with him, I said, I've read all your books. I've listened to all your discs, more than once. And sometimes I'll just pop in those DVDs again and just listen to them, because every time I hear it, I think, you know what, I could do better at this, or I pick up a new term, or I pick up a new concept that he's been saying the same thing for 10 years. I finally hear it differently every time I listen to it, though.
And there's a tremendous shift that happens when you apply what it was that you just learned.
Absolutely.
I always say that knowledge is great, but until you apply that knowledge, you don't get the full benefit out of it. So, you got to actually take it out there and actually apply it. And it takes some practice, and it takes some familiarization with it. It takes getting comfortable with it. But man, there's a pathway there through studying Paul's approach that can benefit virtually any dentist.
Sure. And so with this implant journey that I'm trying to lead, these general dentists down, what do you see as some of the obstacles, involved with this journey? Let's say I'm a general dentist and I want to look into restoring more implants and one day placing implants. I mean, right now, what are the obstacles that
Sure.
a general dental office runs into? What were the obstacles that you guys ran into, and how did you, as a team and as a doctor, try to overcome those?
Yeah, there's a number that jumped to mind immediately. And one would be getting the entire team on board. Patients don't discriminate who they ask their questions to. Phil, you've maybe seen this happen in your practice. You'll present a case to a patient, and then you'll ask the patient, do you have any questions? And the patient will shake their head no. And as soon as you leave the room, they tackle your dental assistant with a host of questions. And, Philip, you're an approachable guy. You're young, you're friendly, you're very approachable, but there's something about that white coat sometimes where patients will shy away from asking you, but they'll tackle your dental assistant. So one of the things we had to teach our team members is that patients don't discriminate who they're going to ask their questions to. And so let's make sure we provide education across the board to all of our team members so that if patients ask questions, we can answer those questions with confidence, and we can provide the patient the information they need. And sometimes the right answer, let's say a dental assistant, maybe she's newer in your practice, will be, let's say, Philip, you're the patient, and you ask Maya, one of my dental assistants, a question. A good answer from Maya would say, Philip, that's a great question. Let's go talk to Dr. Nielsen about that. I want you to hear it directly from him. So there's a good way to sort of tap dance around that. You don't have to know everything, but there's a way to answer those questions confidently so that the patient has the perspective of being taken care of by a competent team. So one would be getting the team on board. Secondly would be developing financial solutions so that the best care can be affordable for your patients. So, a fair question when you stop talking is going to be, Dr. Gordon, how much does that cost? Is that first of all, can I ask you, is that a fair question?
Oh yeah, right after they're usually sold on the procedure, and then they come in and they want to make sure that my team and myself have enough confidence to do the procedure. And that's kind of the interview. That's kind of the dating, first interview. And then they want to know how much it costs. And I think if you can tackle those, you're ahead of the game.
And let me put it in consumer terms. The most popular car by sales volume in the United States is a Honda Accord. Now, depending on how you option that Honda Accord, it costs anywhere from about $24,000 on the low side to about $30,000 on the high side. Let's pick a middle number of about $27,000. Do you think that Honda would sell very many Accords if the only way to buy that car was to walk in and plunk $27,000 on the counter?
That kind of mid-level sedan just turned into a Rolls Royce for 95% of America.
I've driven in Kansas City and I've experienced the traffic. You've probably driven in Phoenix and experienced the traffic. I believe that if that was the only way to buy a car, we'd have no traffic problems in Kansas City or in Phoenix. Yeah, because there wouldn't be any cars.
The bike path would get a lot busier.
Exactly. We've got to figure out a way to make it affordable for patients. So things like outside financing. We use Care Credit in my practice, love Care Credit, but we've gone a step farther as well. And I use comprehensive finance as a financing tool that is really effective. That extends financing to another group of people that may not fit in the other buckets of payment options that we have. But I think you've got to have a payment option that can work for virtually any budget. We have a variety of payment options at LifeSmiles, and we like to say we literally have a payment option that can work for just about every patient that we see. And so that's another thing that we have to solve. A third challenge would be something that we addressed a little bit ago, but I want to circle back around to it, is the dentist developing case presentation skills. And can I illustrate this by a story?
Oh yeah, I think stories are the best way to learn.
So a young client, I won't use his name on a deference to confidentiality. I'm not sure if I'm protecting the guilty or the innocent on this one, but I think it's the guilty. Young dentist client of mine said to me, I'm visiting his practice. He's in Northern California. And he said, Gary, I've got a new patient coming in about 2:00 this afternoon. Would you hang out in the hallway and listen to me presenting dentistry to this patient? And then tonight when we go out to dinner, I'd like you to coach me. And he said, I've really been working on this. And I'd like your your feedback and your input to help me improve even more. And so, at 2:00 at the appointed time, I'm standing in the hallway. He had those walls that don't go all the way up to the ceiling, so you can kind of hear, over the top of the wall what's going on in the room. Anyway, patient comes in. She's 42 years old. She's educated. She's a CPA. And I timed it. Within 10 seconds of doctor opening his mouth, he was talking to her about canine guidance. Now, I wasn't in the room, so I couldn't see it, but I believe her eyes were glazed over at that point. And he went on to talk, because I timed it, for 14 minutes nonstop without taking a breath about canine guidance.
And I'll tell you, that's about 13 minutes more than I know about it. So that's a long time.
He talked for 14 minutes about canine guidance. When he stopped talking, I don't know how he went that long without taking a breath, but when he stopped talking, the patient said, and this is a quote, Philip, the patient said, "Doctor, I have a missing tooth up here. Can you put one of those thingies in there?" Now, Philip, I'm going to put you on, can I put you on the spot?
Oh, yeah.
What was the thingy that she was referring to? Remember, this is a 42-year-old professional woman, CPA. What was the thingy that she was referring to?
Probably a canine.
It was a dental implant.
Oh, okay.
She said, "I have a missing tooth up here. Yeah. Can you put one of those thingies in here?"
See, I even got it wrong. Yeah, a dental implant.
Now, look at the difference here. He's on canine guidance. She's on thingy. Is there any communication that's going on in this room?
None. No.
No. When he walked out of the room, literally sweat was pouring down his brow. He walked past me and he muttered as he walked past me, he goes, "Oh, Gary, we're going to be talking about this tonight at dinner, aren't we?" And at dinner that night, now he's a great guy. At dinner that night, I politely forbid him from ever using the word canine guidance ever again in a consultation with a patient because they have zero chance of understanding that. But, he's so passionate about what he does, and he's so, myopic about it that, he assumed that she knew what he knew, and there wasn't any communication. So a third obstacle is learning how to communicate in a language that the patient understands. Can I help you understand this in a different way, Philip? Now, you may not read it, but you may read it periodically, but you're likely familiar with the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, I don't take it at my house, but I'll pick it up when I'm at hotels, sure. And flip through.
Do you know that if you submitted an article to the Wall Street Journal, if you were a writer, maybe a financial writer or someone on the business press, and you submitted an article, and let's say they were interested in it, let's say they might even think about publishing it. Do you know that the editors of the Wall Street Journal have an editing program that will edit your article to read at the 5th grade level? The Wall Street Journal. Do you know why they have it edited to read at the 5th grade level?
Because nobody ever won that show. Are you smarter than a 5th grader?
Exactly. Bingo. And that's the reading level of the public. And so I'm not, when it comes to dental, these are not stupid people. They're wonderful, beautiful, intelligent people, but they don't understand dentistry. And when we use words like even tooth numbers, they don't know what those tooth numbers are. We have to talk about, front, back, upper left, lower right. You talk about number 2. Do they have any idea what number 2? Well, they know what number 2 is, but that doesn't refer to a tooth. And so we have to, talk in a way that they can understand. So I would say there's 3 obstacles that would be very significant obstacles. Getting the entire team on board so that everything's congruent in your practice. Secondly, developing great financial options to make the best care affordable. And third, learning how to communicate effectively with your patients. Those are the 3 that I would highlight as the top 3. Solve those first and then take a deeper dive in other obstacles from there.
Yeah, those are great. I guess one specific question I have while you were talking about that is, when you're talking about case presentation, let's just say for whatever reason that dentist just can't get it. Would it be better, or do you recommend that coming from a treatment coordinator who maybe speaks that language better and relates better with people? And I mean, don't treatment plans get sold better with a treatment coordinator, or is that a misconception?
Well, I don't believe you can answer that universally, but I will tell you this. I have had a great deal of success with some clients that simply, I remember one time a doctor told me, he was in his early 60s. He said, "Gary, I'm just not sure you can teach this old dog new tricks. And he said, I'll try. But he said, I'm kind of set in my ways, and I know I don't communicate well with my patients. And he said, if you think I need to do it, then I'll do my darndest to try to learn here. But I'm concerned that this old dog can't learn new tricks. And so I decided to quit, to not push the ball uphill. And so what if we did this? What if we hired a really great case presenter who knows dentistry, knows you, can learn about your style of dentistry, and she would be outgoing, social, gregarious. She'd be everything this doctor wasn't. And his eyes lit up and he said, that sounds really good to me. And sure enough, we did just that. And it was a wonderful compliment. So he would present dentistry to the patient, and then he would make a nice pass off to his case presenter who would sit down and present the dentistry. And that certainly can be done. But doctor, before, if anybody's listening to this, before you quickly grab onto that solution, I would encourage you first to try to develop your own skills in that area. That's where I would go first. And there's many ways that you can learn that. One of the simple things you can do is you can start recording. I used to call this my $29 suggestion to improve case acceptance. And the $29 was a reference to back in the day when we didn't have smartphones. You could go to Radio Shack. Remember Radio Shack?
Vaguely.
Yeah, they're
from my childhood. I think I remember buying a remote control, little car from there. In the early
remote
80s.
Control car. Yeah. You could buy a digital recorder from Radio Shack for $29, and I would tell my clients to put that in their lab coat pocket and hit record, and simply record when they're presenting dentistry to patients, and then listen to that in the evening. And it was a great way to radically improve quickly. It's kind of like, I happen to enjoy playing golf, Philip, and it's kind of like watching your golf swing on video. It's almost like you're detached from it. It's like, who's that goofball on the screen with the crazy swing? Oh, wait a minute, that's me. But quickly you can identify what needs to be improved. And so I wouldn't quickly go to the suggestion of hiring a case presenter. I would try to improve your own skills first in that. But if in fact that was something that was proving to be a challenge for you, that can absolutely work. For example, in the world of implants, you're probably familiar with Clear Choice. Philip, are you familiar with the group Clear Choice?
Sure. Here in Kansas City, we've got one about 1 mile north on the major road from my current location.
Yep, I think we've got one less than 3 miles from our office.
And let me just preface that by saying I actually really enjoy them being here because
fabulous.
I get almost a patient or two a week that says, I've seen those Clear Choice commercials. Why don't you tell me about that? And then they just bring it, they just lay it up on a plate for me, and I just take it from there.
Here in Phoenix, I believe at least 3 days a week, maybe 4 days a week, they take out full page ads in our local newspaper. And we simply couldn't afford to do that kind of advertising, But anyway, it directs a lot of patients. First of all, it raises the bar, and everyone seeing that stuff puts dental implants on the radar screen.
Absolutely. Patients come in asking for all-on-4 treatment.
You bet.
And before that, I don't think they wouldn't have known what one of those little thingies was,
Right. They didn't know what the thingy was. Now they're asking for all-on-4. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting about that is they hire case presenters. They have a very sophisticated system, and their case presenters typically it's dangerous to talk generically about their process because they could be different in different facilities, but there is some commonality across them. Typically what they'll hire is the person that they'll hire as a case presenter came from the world of plastic surgery, and typically female, but she was very skilled at presenting elective plastic surgery. And whether it be facial reconstruction or other enhancements. And anyway, now she'll learn how to present dentistry and has no problem presenting a $40,000 or $50,000 case. And they're very effective at it. So there's a case study in effectiveness by having a case presenter actually present the case. But like I said, I would still encourage any of your listeners to work on developing their own skills first before they go to that option.
Yeah, absolutely. And either way, I think the recurring theme here is, you have to learn to get out of your own way because you're not speaking to another dentist. You're speaking to someone who wants you to help them with their teeth, but has no understanding what that means. And so
Can I help with that? Can I help our listeners with that a little bit? One of the things you have to recognize is the difference between a monologue and a dialogue. It's a monologue if you're doing all the talking, if the dentist is doing all the talking. It's a dialogue if there's a discussion between the doctor and the patient. And you want a dialogue, you don't want a monologue. And one of the best ways to shift from a monologue to a dialogue is to ask questions and learn how to ask open-ended questions. Open-ended question is any question that cannot be answered yes or no. So let me give you an example of how not to ask the question. Remember, we don't want to ask a question where the answer is yes or no. Philip, do you like your smile? Yes. You got nowhere to go there. You've got literally nowhere to go. But if you learn how to slightly rephrase that, hey, Philip, tell me how you feel about your smile.
Yeah, just that sentence. Tell me.
Shift.
You're asking for them to tell a story, and you don't know where that story is going to go.
What are some questions that you could ask, related to implants? What are some open-ended questions? I'll put you on the spot, Philip. You deal with this, if not daily, every week in your practice. What are some questions that we could ask that provide the window for patients to provide us information?
Sure. I mean, the person with the floppy denture, I would say, well, tell me what it is about your current denture that you don't like.
Perfect. Instead of, do you like your lower denture? Right. Tell me what it is that you don't like about your current denture. And you might have to duck on that question because they might go on for 5 minutes, which would actually be great because then you would have a wealth of information.
Yeah, it gives you insight as to what the problem is and insight into can I actually solve their problems, and also gives you a little bit of their dental history and their experiences, and you get to peek inside their journey, and then so how better to speak with them.
You want to. This is a concept that comes from Dale Carnegie, and his book How to Win Friends and Influence People there is not a better resource on human nature than that book. But he talks about you really want to seek to understand rather than seeking to be understood. Does that make sense?
I think that's powerful.
And in many cases, dentists try too hard to be understood before they're solving a problem because that's your nature. That's how you were trained to do that. You were trained to solve a problem. That's what dental school is all about. And quickly you move into practice and you quickly go to problem solving before you really understand the human being that you're across from.
And may I also add that's probably the most common problem in my marriage.
I understand. Teresa and I celebrated our 35th anniversary this past summer, and that same advice can apply to our personal relationships as well. That's to seek to understand before trying to be understood. Just remember that one.
Don't try to fix the problem before you've had a chance to listen.
You might be solving a problem that is not the real one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just for fun, give another question. Share another question. I'll reverse roles here since I'm usually on the other end of the mic. I'll ask you the question. What's another question that our listeners might use in a discussion to try to understand more about their patients?
If we're talking about implants, it might be so generally. I think implant patients come in usually one of two things. It's usually the aesthetics or the function, right? And so more and more it's the function piece, because I think even aesthetically, those patients coming in with the missing number 7, they get in a hurry and they understand that. But it's the people that are starting to have problems chewing. They lose a molar here and a molar there, but then it turns into 3 or 4 or quadrants of teeth, and so. That's where the dysfunction really lies, and I think that's where you have better luck with these conversations, because you want to understand the complexity of the problem. Not so everybody wants to fix number 8, right? But it's when quadrants and chunks of areas of the mouth are missing, and the breakdown really occurs. And it's.
Can I suggest a couple?
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, I'll just suggest a couple. And again, this is partly thematic to some things we've talked about before. But Philip, if you were my patient and I'm the dentist, I might say, hey, Philip, what are the kind of things that you like to eat? Tell me what you like to eat. If the world was perfect and you could eat anything you want, what do you like to eat? And I just zip it up and listen. Because usually what they'll say, well, I used to really like corn on the cob. I used to really like a good steak. I can't remember the last time I had that. Well, you're going to get all kinds of information, right? So you might frame that by saying, hey, Philip, if the world was perfect and you had perfect dental health, tell me what it is that you like to eat. And just zip it up and listen. Yeah. Another one.
Well, and let me jump in here. That actually reminds me of one that I thought of while you said that I ask a lot, and it's I like to preface it with kind of like you did. I'll say in a perfect world, removing all the barriers, what would be your goal for your mouth?
That's where I was going to go next.
And again, I don't know if maybe I've heard you say that or somebody, but just tell them ahead of time. Let's just pretend I could remove all the barriers.
You have to kind of tune into your patient. So let's say that the patient is a little bit more playful, has a little bit more of a sense of humor. Maybe you feel like you're developing a pretty good rapport with that patient. You might pick up your pen and you might say, Philip, see this pen here? Pretend it was a magic wand. Now it's not, it's a pen. But if I could wave my magic wand and we could accomplish anything with your dental health, what goals do you have for your dental health? What would you like to see happen? Now, that wouldn't be appropriate for, an engineer with pocket protectors and, very straight button down. That wouldn't be appropriate. But you could reframe it. For that person, you could simply say, Philip, I always like to know what's important to you. If we could handle things ideally, what are the goals that you have for your mouth? And then the hardest part is to stop talking. Just zip it up and listen. Sometimes, well, what do you mean? Well, if it was just perfect, if we could just, I could snap my fingers and we could make it perfect, remove any barriers. What do you want? What goals? What would you like to see happen with your mouth?
Yeah, and very rarely do you hear the answer that you were expecting to hear. Because sometimes it's, since I lost these teeth, I can't chew, and I'm afraid that, my kids are going to see my smile with no teeth, and I just can't ever live with that.
It could be something like, I remember my dad lost his teeth at about this age. And I remember for the rest of his life, he complained about ill-fitting dentures. I don't want to go down that path. It might be an event coming up in their life. It might be, hey, doc, my daughter's getting married next year, and I want to be able to smile and have a beautiful smile for the wedding photos. You don't know what's going to come up.
I've had the wedding, happen a lot, but I've also had even a younger audience. You've got maybe people that had a lot of neglect, and now they're in their 30s and 40s, and they've grown up a bit. And I had a young man in my office last week, and his wife is pregnant with their firstborn, and he said, I have to start taking care of these problems. I want to be able to smile and chew and function. I know that my nutrition, I can't eat. I want to be around for a long time, and we're going to be delivering our first child next spring. Can you help me out? And so
powerful.
Yeah,
You've
powerful.
got and you would never get that information if you don't ask those questions. So, one of the best takeaways for any of your listeners would be to learn to ask questions. Learn to ask questions, and then truly listen. And I'll share a thought with any of your listeners, and that is that are you really listening, or are you waiting for your turn to speak?
Yeah, true.
And sadly, we've all, self-included, been guilty of the latter part of that, where we're not really listening. We're thinking about what we're going to say next. And you really have to be effective, you've got to be an active listener in the present. And one of the ways that you can be an active listener is you can, without being obnoxious about it, you can paraphrase back what you've heard. So for example, Phil, I'll just make this up. I'm the dentist, you're the patient. I might say something, and I'll make this up as I'm going. Hey, Phil, let me test my perception of what's important to you. What I'm hearing you say is that you definitely are interested in restoring your health. We may need to phase some things in with respect to your budget, but your goal is to get as healthy as possible as long as we can do that within your budget. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, you nailed it.
Or it might be more obvious. Let me repeat back to make sure I'm getting all the details. I'm hearing you say that we have a deadline of next summer because of your daughter's wedding. And so whatever we do, we want to make sure we're accomplished before next summer. And, having married, daughters in the past, I know how important it is to have enough lead time so that you can enjoy the time around the wedding. So really, we want to be done well before next summer. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And ask just paraphrase back.
Because you could think you're hearing it and you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're a test for accuracy, and just ask the question. And, remember that, are you really listening? Or are you just waiting for your turn to talk? You want to, my grandmother had a saying, and she said, but by the way, the older I get, the wiser I realize my grandmother was. Mm-hmm. My grandmother used to say, the good Lord gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a good reason. You should listen twice as much as you talk.
It's amazing. It's amazing the lessons that maturity will teach you.
Yeah, I think I laughed at that when she would tell me that. And the older I got, the more I realized she was onto something there.
Well, I know, we've talked about a lot and covered a lot of ground. We've probably covered enough for one show, I'm sure of it. Anything else that you could leave my listeners with as far as, what if somebody says, I understand the soft side has to be there and I just don't have it. What systems can Gary hook me up with? How can they get a hold of you? What's the best way other than listening to your podcast to get some of your information and your knowledge and some of your connections?
You bet. Hey, before I get into that, I want to leave one more tip for your listeners. May I do that?
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely.
This is something I literally want anybody listening to take action on. One of the biggest challenges with dental implants are that patients don't know you do them. They don't know. And think about your office, doctor. Is there anything in your office that would let patients know that dental implants are available in your practice? Now, maybe you have things like that. Maybe you have study models and that sort of thing. But how do they know? So a very simple thing that you can do is you can take an after photo and, pick a patient, and this might be a patient, the patient who kind of represents your prototypical implant patient. And if you want to do more replacing floppy lower dentures, pick a patient where you've replaced the floppy lower denture with beautiful fixed implants. And take an after photo. Make sure the patient has signed a release allowing you to use their photo for educational and marketing reasons. And then incorporate that photo into a simple discussion with any new patients in your practice. We do that as part of our tour. For example, in our reception area, Philip, all of the artwork that we have actually really beautiful photos of the Southwest. We're here in Phoenix, Arizona, so we have really beautiful photos of the Grand Canyon, of Lake Powell, of Sedona, Arizona. So they're more traditional artwork kind of photos in the reception room. In the back office, in the clinical area, the only artwork we have up are actual photos of our patients, after photos. Not before and after, because that's gross. Just the after ones. We have beautiful, these are done by a professional photographer. And when Carly's given the new patient a tour, she'll stop at one of these photos and she'll say something like this: Philip, although we're a general dental practice, we also have advanced skill and training in helping our patients with cosmetic dentistry, with complex restorative dentistry, and with dental implants. All of the patients, all the photos you see back here are actual patients of ours that we've helped have the smile of their dreams. Just very easy thing to do. And now the patient knows that we do cosmetic dentistry, restorative dentistry, and dental implants. And that patient may be a 22-year-old ASU student. But we're still going to have that discussion with them because guess what? Her mother or grandmother may be a candidate for dental implants. And now she knows that we do that, and she'll become an ambassador for us out there. So a simple thing that any of your listeners can do would be incorporate an after photo. Obviously, it's got to be an attractive photo. It should be taken by a photographer. Have that attractively displayed in your office, and incorporate a simple way of saying that although we're a general dental practice, we have advanced skills and training in our case, it's cosmetic dentistry, complex restorative dentistry, and dental implants. And all of the photos you see here are actual patients of ours that we've helped have the smile of their dreams.
That's great. Yeah, because I think if you're not preaching it, then how else are they going to know? And, it's not always...
Well, we don't have a menu, we don't want them.
No, we don't. Yeah, we don't have a menu. Absolutely. But
you got to suddenly let them know what's available. There's people that have heard of dental implants, but they don't. Do I have to go to a specialist for that? Can I have that done in a general office? Now we let them know.
They just don't know what they don't know. And
they don't know what they don't know.
And if you're not telling them, then there's no way they'll know.
Yeah.
No, I guess.
Well, to answer your question, would love any of your listeners to, if you have listening bandwidth and you'd love to listen to another podcast in addition to yours, please tune into the Thriving Dentist Show. It's on iTunes. You can subscribe to it on iTunes. You can also, if you're an Android person, you can subscribe to it on Google Play or whatever your podcast directory of choice is. You can hit the subscribe button every Wednesday when we publish a new show. This past Wednesday was our 258th show. So very excited to share the podcast. It's free. It's my way of giving back to the profession. And my core business is myself and my team members, my coaches, work with dental practices all over the country to help you develop your ideal practice. If you'd like a coach, please feel welcome to visit the website. It's Takacs, my last name, Takacs. TakacsLearningCenter.com. We'd love the opportunity to work with you and help you develop your ideal practice.
Thank you for your time today, Gary. And, there's a lot of information that we touched on here, and then I know you could go volumes deeper. So maybe next time the Earth goes around the sun, I'll give you another call and we can do this again.
Well, my grandmother said, never invite yourself. I'm going to violate. She'd be rolling over her grave if she heard me do this. But hey, you wouldn't have to ask me twice to come on back. I'd love to come on back on the show and share more useful information with your listeners.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Good deal. Thanks, Philip. Sure appreciate being part of your show.